Welcome students of class 8. Today we are going to read about the concluding part of your text that we were doing all this while, and that is Goodbye Mr. Chips. Okay, so all this while we have been learning about, reading about how Mr. Chips was an inseparable part of the institution of Brookfield. And today we are going to progress towards how did he leave for his heavenly abode, and how and what was he in the students' minds and hearts, and where did they keep him? What did everything mean to him? What did Brookfield mean to him? That is how we are going to end our text and our discussion on Goodbye Mr. Chips. So I would like to read from the place where we had ended. This is on page 143. So I'll start. It was around 1933, when he had just turned 85, that Chips fell badly ill. So finally he had to leave Brookfield Institution. Obviously he was symbolized with the institution, and he was so deeply associated with it. It definitely, a person can't stay there permanently, alright? Can't stay at a place permanently. They have to accept the change that life has to offer to them, or that life brings them in the change. The doctor gave him medicines to soothe his nerves. He fell into a kind of somnolence that was partly sleep and partly wakefulness. Somewhat, it can be something between that we term to be Alzheimer's or dementia, which is particularly a disease of the old age where people face sleep disorders. It's or dysfunctional sleep. It is not directly written over here, but we can assume that things that can be related to the old age. All right. And how do we term his state to be? An in-between state full of dreams and faces, voices, old scenes, scraps of old times, cheers and laughter, and over it all the Brookfield bells. So during that state, we can definitely say Mr. Chips remembered nothing but all that was related to Brookfield, the place where he had spent most of his life. It summed up his entire life. The state that he was in the last stages of his life, it practically reminded him every moment that he spent in the Brookfield institution. Now, Brookfield was ingrained in his mind in such a way that people around him, they tended to understand him to be only associated with that institution. They seem to have forgotten that he had a personal life, that he might have been somebody different. And let's see what the doctor says. Once he heard the doctor whispering, "Poor old chap must have lived a lonely sort of life all by himself." So they call him lonely, but it's so ironical to what Mr. Chips's life had been. His life was full of connections with his students. Remember, I was talking about the rapport that he had with his students and the connections with the teachers. And obviously in the previous session, we read about the fact that the parents were also in support of him. The governor, the governors, the chairman, he was in support of him. Obviously he had good connections, but people didn't seem to associate all those things with him. All right. And not always by himself. He did marry, but it was only for a year or two, and then she died, the attendant said. So they were having this chat regarding Mr. Chips. And Catherine was his wife. He had married Catherine. She was quite young to him by age. And it is said, if you get hold of the novella, you'll get to understand that she was the one who made him bring about changes in his life. We knew Mr. Chips to be somebody who did not want to go to that transition, who did not want to change himself according to the modern world. So he did not believe in the radical changes. But Catherine brought about changes in him. She made him believe in all those. So she changed him for the better, we can say that. She made him take all the new things in life. So, pity, he never had children, said the doctor. And that Chips opened his eyes as wide as he could and sought to attract the attention of the speakers. So suddenly the doctor said something that Chips did not quite agree to. He said he never had children, right? And then the manner, he was not in a state, not in that energy, did not have the energy to raise his voice. He just did what he could. He just raised his eyebrows. He just opened his eyes so big so that it seemed that he was trying to refute what the doctor had just stated, that he did not have children. To a teacher, all his students or all her students are like children to them. So they have a parent child kind of a relationship. All right. So a teacher always takes care of her students as if they are a part of their own family, part of her own family, like her children. So when your exams come upon, or when your exams are knocking at the door, we are tensed because of that. Your board exams come in, we are tensed. So to a teacher, the student is like a child. So we definitely cannot just embark on the fact, or just we cannot stay on the fact that Mr. Chips did not have children. He did have. Those were his students. And what did he try to say? I thought I heard you say I never had any children, but I have. Obviously, so he means his students were like his children. And then the chorus sang in his ears in the final harmony, more grandly and sweetly and comfortingly than ever. So then we are brought about, this is an abridged version, so you might not have the, a direct link as to what is happening after the other. You might not have that. If you really want to know what happened after the other, a sequence of it, the scenes that came, okay, one after the other in the story, you need to have the unabridged version. So here we are just focusing on the important part, most important parts. So over here we are at this scene when people are actually bidding goodbye to Mr. Chips. Like, he is about to leave for his heavenly abode to be one with God, and so he's taking his last breath. Okay. And the chorus, at that time, he's in a trance. He suddenly has passed into a trance. He's not there in reality, and he hears a chorus, a group singing, a choir singing, and it seems to him to be very celestial, very divine, very heavenly. And angels are known to sing choruses, and he hears his little boys, the boys that he has been fond of, his students, singing a song to him. Final harmony, more grand. Okay, what does he hear? Pettifer, Paulette, Porson, Potts, Pullman, Purvis, Pym, Wilson. So long and long it goes. Come around me now, all of you, for a last word and joke, my boys. So in the unabridged version, we have many more names. Okay, so here you have the letter P, and then you have B and H, names starting from B, and then continuing with B and ending with H. So all in an alliterative fashion. It is like a litany, a ritualistic song that is mostly sung in churches. You have many more in the original text. And why does he hear, why did Mr. Chips hear all these names? Because in his last days, on his deathbed, he seems to have been feeling that all these boys are accompanying him. It is said that when a person is on his deathbed, breathing his last, his entire life just appears to him like a vision, like a montage shot, one after the other, like you see in the movies. So it's just the same that was happening with Mr. Chips out here. And how does he look at his life when he sees this, when he hears this? What are his feelings regarding his life? He dies a satisfied soul with no regret, without any regrets. So, all his students were very dear to him as a teacher. A teacher always, comes alive, lives in the moments only with his or her students. All the other things, all the other struggles of life, they are nothing compared to the time when he or she spends, the time that he or she spends in class with his students or her students. So that is something that is incomparable, and that cannot be bought, that is of the highest value, or you cannot attach any value to it. So that is what a teacher's life is. It reminds him that no matter what anybody says, the doctor would have said he's lonely, he did not have children, but it reminds him that the children singing around him, that all those little children who must have been placed in good positions now, they have grown up, but still he remembers them to be that little, all surrounding him. And no matter what the others say, his perspective regarding his life is that he's lived his life full of purpose, friendship, meaning and connections. He hasn't been lonely. Everything that he had in his life other than Brookfield meant nothing, and Brookfield was the only thing that meant something to him. So connection to his students, friendship with his students, that's what he can remember. And now that all has been achieved by him, he can lay at rest. So, and they are all surrounded. He's surrounded by them, and he is just at peace. What does a man want when he is at his deathbed? That he dies, that he leaves the world in peace. And Mr. Chips, he was soon asleep. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Now this is like a tribute by James Hilton to his very beloved teacher, or his ideal teacher. That could be his father, his mentor, or the teacher that he had looked up to when he was in school. And all of that amalgamated into this character, Mr. Chips. And this was like a tribute to an ideal teacher, how the life of an ideal teacher should look like. How should we bid goodbye to him? So I think the title of this story is very appropriately given, Goodbye Mr. Chips, because at the end of the day, it really matters how everything ends, how a person feels at the end of his life. Definitely we are going to celebrate when a person has lived his life being happy, being cheerful, doing things in activity and everything. But at the end of the day, it matters how we have bid goodbye to that person. Was it appropriate? If we have given him a fitting farewell or not, that is what matters the most. And with Mr. Chips, it definitely did. So yeah, that was the entire text that we've come to the end of it, and from that we definitely got to know a lot of things. We embarked on the teacher-student relationship, and I told you about it as well in the online sessions. How should it be like? Deeply inspirational, understanding each student individually, consistent communication, a state where the student feels emotionally safe with the teacher, where there should be mutual respect, and obviously where the teacher should, and the student also, should establish equity, being fair or being impartial. So everything was achieved by Mr. Chips, and that's what we can really conclude about such a jolly good character, a character that was just full of life and knew nothing except for how he could be a better companion to his students, rather than being just a teacher who taught them the subject or taught them other things, taught them values obviously, but also being a friend to them, being a companion to them, whom they could approach very easily, one who was very dear to them. With this, we've come to the end of our chapter and also end of the video. You will soon receive a consolidated worksheet on the very chapter, on the same chapter, and another grammar chapter of course, which we will be taking up during the week. Thank you, children.